på temat hur friheten påverkar journalistiken och litteraturen. Pressfrihetsdagen är ju en dag som brukar fokusera på fängslade kollegor, mördade kollegor, kidnappade kollegor och brukar vara en ganska mörk dag. Men för en tid sedan så hörde du Elnas från Svenska Pens dissidentbloggen av det med en idé om att ska vi inte göra något annorlunda i år? Hur gick dina tankar?
Ja, alltså vi har ju följt utvecklingen i Etiopien under det senaste året och det är ju någonting som man sällan är med om, att det blir så stora förändringar på en gång. Och vi har följt Etiopien och vi gjorde ett nummer i dissidentbloggen 2015 där situationen såg helt annorlunda ut. Och där vi då publicerade texter av fängslade författare, journalister som frisläpps, som fortfarande var i fängelset. Och då när man ser de här förändringarna så känns det lika viktigt att dokumentera det som pågår här och nu. Vad är det som sker? Och sätta ord på det. Och kanske även ge en annan skildring av det som den vanliga nyhetsbevakningen ger. Att ge liksom rösterna inifrån, från själva författarna och journalisterna. Och det var därför jag kontaktade dig och tyckte att det kändes självklart att dissidentbloggen och Blankspot skulle göra någonting ihop. Och också ge den här andra bilden. Och
sen har vi också fått med Civil Rights Defender som medarrangör till frukostseminariet här idag. Nej, men det slog mig när jag tittade i min dator och hittade så här gamla tal man har hållit på pressfrihetsdagen. Så har de ju liksom tagit fasta på just alla kollegor som sitter fängslade. Och för 2 år sedan bara så skrev jag att man önskar egentligen att man slapp göra det här. Att man slapp liksom uppmärksamma fängslade kollegor. Och att man önskar man hade fått ett samtal från Addis Abeba där de sa liksom, Tafachi, vi är fria. Och plötsligt i år så kom ju det samtalet. Och att något som man också känt är viktigt är att stanna upp och försöka se hur kunde det här hända och vad får det här för konsekvenser, och att inte bara liksom springa vidare utan att någonstans stanna upp. Och därför så började vi skicka ut förfrågningar då till många som hade skrivit i dissidentbloggen när de satt fängslade, många som jag själv personligen satt fängslad med, och ställde frågan liksom, men vad har friheten betytt för ditt skrivande? Du som har slitit med de här texterna och läst dem utan och innan, vad är det som har gjort störst intryck på dig bland alla texter som idag har publicerats på dissidentbloggen?
Nej, men det är väldigt starka texter och som du säger, det här är liksom, det blir ett tidsdokument, att just att vi har stannat upp här och liksom skickat ut den här förfrågan och bett vad är det som händer nu, och det är väldigt rörande texter för att det innehåller väldigt mycket hopp om att vilja liksom tro, för jag menar, vi vet ju Etiopiens historia, det har varit den ena liksom pseudodemokratin som har avlöst den andra, och man har liksom hoppats och så har det liksom varit bakslag hela tiden. Och det jag känner med de här texterna är just den här att man vill hoppas och tro att det är annorlunda den här gången. Men det finns ändå den där försiktigheten. Det är liksom, man vågar inte liksom riktigt fullt ut, och det är liksom tro att så här, är det annorlunda den här gången. Men det är ju väldigt starkt också att publicera de här texterna, som jag sa, att vi några av dem som skrev 2015 och vad de skriver idag 2019, att det är ju helt andra texter.
Och jag fick skriva, vilket var också fantastiskt, och det jag kände var att också någonting man lätt kan glömma är ju som de osjungna hjältarna. Att det är lätt att man hamnar nu i en situation där alla tittar på premiärministern Abiy och liksom att han har infört det här och det spekuleras i Nobels fredspris och en massa annat. Att man då också glömmer alla de här åren, 2014, 15, 16, då ju tiotusentals människor har demonstrerats, hundratals har skjutits ihjäl, många har fängslats. Alltså de som fick betala det högsta priset för att förändringen skulle äga rum, men som aldrig fick uppleva den.
Det är ju de som vi har velat också ge plats åt att publiceras, och många av de här författarna och journalisterna som vi publicerar befinner sig i exil, och det blir också väldigt talande att de inte finns i land utan har liksom betalat ett högt pris och lever på en annan plats idag.
En av de som har bidragit med en dikt är Leo Libsikal, och den dikten kommer att läsas av poeten Sofia Stenström. Och efter det så kommer vi sedan ha en seminariediskussion med mig och Mesfin Negash, journalist och programansvarig på Civil Rights Defenders, och Bisrat Voldemikael som är journalist och för detta fristadsförfattare från Uppsala. Välkommen Sofia Stenström. Och dikten heter Salt och metall.
Och ja, hej. Den är översättning, ska jag säga, också från engelska av Helena Hansson. I utkanten vrider sig friheten, ett oanständigt ord. Vi tittade på tv och tiggde om saker för att hålla kvar andan och freden. Och när kropparna sipprade ut på gatan med nakna speglande ansikten, skimrande som åkrar med täff som vajar unisont i vinden, i solen, det skänkta ljuset, haspade vid dörrarna och vakade framför skärmen. Svettades kall, historisk svett. Vi såg hur landet sträckte på sig som en mor som långsamt vaknar, och smaken av levrat blod svider fortfarande mellan hennes barns läppar. Stillheten före utbrottet skvalpar ännu mot deras öron, och flaggorna böljar. Släpp in det goda ljuset, vrålade vi och torkade av oss fruktan och misstro. Det börden präglat oss med. Hon tillhör oss. Hon tillhör oss alla. Vi drar våra kroppar in till hennes hud, outplånlig, som ännu gråter ioner av salt och metall. Vi håller vakt på det att ingen må glömma.
Tack så jättemycket. Och då välkomnar jag upp Mesfin Negash och Bisrat Voldemikael. Välkomna upp här. And then we will change language to English. I think we have all followed the news and developments the last year, and I'm sure that you in the audience and everybody following the live stream has followed the events taking place in Ethiopia, the political earthquake, as some people has called it. Tens of thousands of political prisoners have been released. All the journalists have been released, and as we speak in Addis Ababa today, the World Press Freedom Day is celebrated, organized by UNESCO and the Africa Union. And yesterday I saw a lot of formerly jailed journalists who were eating dinner with the Prime Minister, Abiy Ahmed. The focus for this seminar will not really be what has happened, the political development, but what it means for you as writers. You are both journalists and have been covering the development in Ethiopia, first in the country and then in exile. If I start with, I mean, what is the main challenge with freedom, Mesfin?
This is the first time, maybe in 20 years, that we are celebrating World Press Freedom Day without complaining about people in prison, journalists, writers, whatsoever. So it's really very intense emotionally for many Ethiopian writers and journalists. The main challenge now for Ethiopian writers and journalists, for me, is one is learning how to handle freedom. We tend to assume that by default we know how to handle freedom, but I'm afraid we don't. as we have seen in the last 1 year in Ethiopia and quite in similar countries and societies who went through similar chaotic transitions. So I think that is the main challenge ahead of Ethiopian writers and journalists, because especially those who focuses on very critical political and social issues, for the most part, they were in a resistance mood. And now there is no one solid target to target or to complain about, to criticize and so on. So they need to unlearn this behavior and this approach to the world, how to scrutinize the world and how to report the stories. That is one challenge. The second main challenge is professionalization. In the ladder of professionalization, the Ethiopian media sector is maybe somewhere at the bottom. And that will be the biggest challenge for individual journalists and media houses, and even for the government in the coming years and maybe months, I don't know. So those two are, for me, the most outstanding challenges.
Mm-hmm. Bisrat, you wrote a book about the media situation in Ethiopia, which, I mean, painted a very dark picture, an analysis that we all shared. What do you see now when you look at the situation, and what challenges does freedom come with?
Thank you. Actually, I agree with Mesfin. This is a new chapter for us. If we use properly, this is a good opportunity for Ethiopian journalists and writers. But I see the problem, especially the challenge that comes from the governments, the institution, and the individuals, like the privates. One of the challenges, the misuse of freedom of expression and press freedom. How we handle that, means, or how we practice press freedom or free speech or freedom of expression. For example, the last 3 years, actually not only the last 3 years, it's the last 11 years, I have seen lots of misuse of that freedom of speech, like somebody insults the other one, or the hate speech spreading through the new digital media, like including even the state media and the state-owned media. Even today, if you watch for some of the regional state media, you can see how they misuse that press freedom means, how they practice. That's the challenge. And the other one is the fake news. Also, it's another challenge. How can the journalists verify those fake news, and how handle such kind of damage? That's another challenge. And the third one is censorship. As you know, censorship is a serious case, and we can divide into two. That's the censorship. Maybe that comes from the institution or the government, and the other one is the private, the government that's regulated by the law or attacking, like in different system, through the security apparatus. And the private one, for example, right now, if you criticize somebody, including Abiy Ahmed, because Abiy is not perfect, I appreciate him, what he's doing great, but he's not perfect. He has some problems as a man, as a person. We should accept that one. But if you criticize or if you raise some question, somebody attack you, or some, like the private, the individuals, which means you refrain, or you regret to report, or you regret to criticize, or you regret to give alternative ideas, which means it's very serious damage. That's why intellectuals, they stand outside the box, like outside the stage. That's the challenge. And the fourth challenge is lack of a rule of law. Really, the governments apply the rule of law, even including the press issue, because nowadays it's media, it's most of the media monopolized by the government, which means it has the limitation that the flow of information to the people. Let me show you some data, for example. Nowadays, the state-owned broadcast media, for example, radio, 10 radio stations that's owned by the states, and 9 television stations are owned by the states, which means all, especially the regional media houses owned by or controlled by the states, which means the flow of information generally manipulated by the states. They can't present. That's the main challenge. So the independent journalists or the private journalists have no access to get the information, especially in the rural area or outside the capital city in Addis. That's a challenge because the district level administrators have no willingness to give for verification or balancing information. That's one of the lack of the rule of law. That's the challenge. And we can mention the other one, or we can compare and contrast the other also, the video. So it's in general. So I agree with Mesfin, that's the professionalism, it's the big challenge, it's not new. It's also the last 27 years challenge. I agree with that one, and I admit, because I know the problem, the gap. That's the challenge, the censorship, because, for example, Abiy now, he opened the space, but it doesn't mean, that's not a guarantee for protecting the censorship.
I mean, I think both of you point out that so much more needs to happen than just releasing journalists from jail in order to create a vibrant, media, both in terms of rules and regulation from the government side, but also in terms of professionalism from the journalist side. Yep. One thing that strikes me from following it from the outside is, and Washington Post had an op-ed on it the other day, that these new media projects are fanning ethnic tension, quote unquote, and that a lot of tensions that were maybe pushed down during the years of Meles Zenawi and the first years of Haile Mariam Desalegn are now kind of in the public sphere. I mean, I remember just one, anecdote from in the prison. You could have a police officer if he was from the Oromo region, for example, and the prisoner was from Tigray region. It could happen that the Tigray prisoner would beat the police officer and nothing would happen because there was such a difference in social status. And I know something that was discussed was, if this oppression is relieved, what will happen with all these conflicts? What are your thoughts on the media's role in not fanning this ethnic tension, or is it such a big problem?
Well, that particular Washington Post report really lacks sympathy to the social context, honestly speaking, and it's not fair to paint all media outlets in one brush and calling them that the Ethiopian media is fanning ethnic tension. That's not the case, really. Yes, there are very, very few mainstream media outlets who are engaged in, promoting and provoking different communities. But majority of them are not even interested in politics. They are talking about, whichever pop artist you have. So that's not fair to generalize in general. but certainly, especially social media, especially in the last 1 year or 2 years, is becoming more problematic when it comes to fomenting these ethnic tensions. And the media is not existing in a vacuum. Whether we like it or not, for good or bad, media reflects the society. And it's only 1 year since the Ethiopian society is allowed to say whatever they like. So I think many of these provocative and sometimes genocidal things, messages, should be tolerated in my view. Because there is no other way than letting people to express their anger, their prejudice, and so on. I'm not suggesting that it should be free for every kind of speech. I don't believe that. There should be a limit. But it is too early for me really to talk about that. Unfortunately, there is another worrying trend for me that these days, if you go back and see all new opening media outlets, many of them have some sort of ethnic undertone. Either majority of their funders are coming from one ethnic group, or they focus on messages and topics or concerns of one ethnic group. Neither of these two are bad by themselves. I'm not suggesting that. But the more ethnicization is institutionalized in the media sector, the more we are denied the public to converse, to exchange ideas between ethnic groups, because everybody is in his showroom and talking with your own ethnic compatriot, talking about the same thing, blaming all the rest of the world for whatever happened to you. And one, it is counterproductive for the nation, for the country, and at the end of the day also the media. I very much doubt if these ethnic-based media outlets will sustain. But in the meantime, I'm afraid they may cause quite a lot of harm, as we see in the last few months. But I don't see banning them is a solution either. We should let them speak whatever prejudice they have. There is no other way, unfortunately.
Let them speak, says Mesfin. Do you agree, Bisrat?
No, I disagree with Mesfin because I know the impacts. Let us talk Rwanda, what's happened in 1991. They started the media, the hate speech. They promote the Hutu group to attack the Tutsi. Then the songwriters and the musicians follow this way. Finally, after 3 years, that social damage happened. Within a short period of time, more than 800,000 people killed and 2 million people displaced because of this kind of hate speech or that kind of damage. So actually, I don't want to say, or I'm not saying like regulating freedom of expression or press freedom or free speech. But hate speech or disinformation or fake news, all those are not part of freedom of expression. Because freedom of expression by itself, what we want to talk or what we think about something, and we should respect for the other friends or colleagues or blah blah. But nowadays, if you watch the media or social media, really, some news, even they share and immediately they share distorted information, the fake news. Even they shared the Rwanda picture, the genocide picture, just as Ethiopian incident, then share some of the ethnic groups. That's deliberately done by some activists and journalists. So this is very serious case. So I think the solution, I have an idea, like at least independent journalist association, if there is independent journalist association, maybe that helps to regulate just the journalists. Like they should follow the ethics principles of the profession, and the other one is how can apply like this, how can manage the media houses, like before spreading or promoting hate speech or this ethnic provoking and blah blah. So I think I'm afraid that's one, because if you think like Bosnia case, if you think about Rwanda case, what happened, forget it. Even Hitler case here in Germany, how he promotes first on the newspaper, then finally what happened in 1945, because he started 1941, then 1940 till 1945, we know more than 70 million people already killed.
And
so
I know that Abiy Ahmed are now suggesting new laws, also when it comes to fake news, and there is a discussion. But isn't it difficult to draw the line? I mean, we have a discussion also in Sweden about fake news, and we are struggling with it in
not only fake news, not only fake news, hate speech. Nowadays, it's not only Ethiopian problem; it's a global problem. It's a global problem. You can go in America or wherever you go, like including Trump. I disagree, that's one. So at least everyone should respect for the other person, and they should regulate their own speech. Really, does it affect the other friends or not?
Well, regulating hate speech is one of the topics which has been discussed, I don't know, for decades, maybe centuries. So I don't think every one of us will agree on one strict answer or solution. And I think different societies should take different measures depending on their local dynamics and the context. I am not rejecting the idea of limiting and regulating to protect to limit the damage of hate speech, definitely. But it shouldn't introduce as, a bullet, a kind of panacea that solves everything. Because, especially in the Ethiopian case, the hate speech is not just coming out of some bad people. Mutual suspicion between ethnic groups has been the mainstream narrative of the state for more than 20 years. So now what we see is only maybe it is expressed in a more shocking and vulgar way. That is a difference for me, honestly speaking. So, and I'm sure, mark my word, everybody who's suggesting for more regulation of speech in Ethiopia will be the first to criticize Abiy when he started regulating it. That's my worry. And then we'll end up the same place where we started. Oh, the government is regulating us too much. Well, you invited it. That will be my answer. So, for me, I would prefer the government give some space for some time. I don't know what some means, even in my sentences, because the government, the state, should have a better information than me to understand and to analyze what's going on and the impact of the hate speech going on social media. So it's a very delicate subject, and my suggestion, which I was asked for, was not to rush to regulate these things.
Can I add one thing?
Yeah, shortly.
Actually, the solution is not only regulating this free speech or something. At least the speaker or those hate speech promoter, they should take responsibility and accountability, either by the professional association or media council or journalist association or whatever it is, but they respect their law. I'm not saying in general that's regulated by the government. That's I'm against of that. But because I know the damage, I mentioned only Rwanda and or Bosnia or Germany. Even that happened in Ethiopia. Let me tell you, like September 14, what happened? They promote hate speech. Those promoters live in safe space in outside Ethiopia, like America, Australia, and here in Europe. Then they promote. I have those hate speech. I have those copies. Finally, when they promote today, then the next day, 28 people killed, and many people displaced. Do you remember Brayu? What's happened?
Yes.
So that's the cause of hate speech. But even they create false flag. You see? So in this case, how can we manage?
Yeah. For those of you who are following the live stream, we are discussing the challenges of freedom and trying to see the development in Ethiopia and what it means for journalists and media and writers. But on the World Press Freedom Day, there is a lot of people now visiting Addis Ababa, and one question that everyone is asking is like, but how did this happen? What is, what can we learn? We had just a year ago a situation with a lot of people jailed. What can we learn as media professionals or as NGOs and other stakeholders? What is a lesson to be learned in Ethiopia? From where did this change come from? What do you see the main reason behind this political earthquake, as I called it?
The consistency of struggle. I think the strong struggle, and the organized struggle, that's the solution. I mean, the result that comes from the long or the consistent struggle, and also well-organized young people, and don't give up for fighting against of repressive or oppressive of any anti-freedom of expression or anti-press freedom or anti-free speech. Then we will see the results. So that's.
What do you say, Mesfin? Is it too early to analyze it? Or?
Yeah, for me it is.
Yeah,
It's very complicated, honestly speaking. But one lesson we may draw, as Strat said, is for journalists and writers. Keep telling the stories as you see them in a positive note. That is the good lesson. The bad lesson from what we have done in the process or before this change came, unfortunately, majority of my colleagues and fellow countrymen politicized what they do, over-politicize. That is, I think, the lesson maybe other people in repressive societies or journalists and writers especially may learn. It's better to politicize less, even if under repressive situations, because it will be much easier, I assume, to adapt to operate under a free environment. Otherwise, as we have seen in Ethiopia, there was over-politicization for the most part when people were criticizing and resisting repression. And now, at least the state repression is gone, but media houses and journalists and writers are now facing a sort of an identity crisis or a confusion about their role and their mission, what we are up to now. Okay, we have been resisting repression. That was so clear, a very beautiful objective, and we are there now. And then what? You can see even in some big media houses, the controversy between journalists and editors. What's our role then? Some say that this is a good start, so we better tone down our criticism and rather sort of supports the process because it is fragile. The other says, yes, it is a new environment, but we should keep on being very critical because we are not yet reached at the final station. I don't know what that final station is. So, and you can see it in even individuals, by the way. When you talk to them, individual journalists, when we discuss one topic, they are too moderate. When you change the topic, wow. So it is at an individual and at a media house levels also. We are in transition. Ethiopia is under transition at all levels. So obviously the media houses and journalism cannot be out of this overall flowing situation.
Do you have any thoughts on that? Being on the outside for so long, building up kind of antagonism against the regime, and then suddenly the regime changes and the need for professionalism.
Yeah, I think the media houses and the journalists they should play just as their profession and as their duty or role.
But are people today, I mean, if the self-censorship before was not being able to criticize Meles Zenawi or Haile Mariam or the ruling coalition, are people today in Ethiopia afraid of criticizing Abiy?
Because they are afraid to backlash this reform. That's their concern, I think. Somehow I agree with that one. But I think if you want to support him, or if you want to sustain, or if you want to promote the sustainability of this reform, when we need criticize his wrong way or his wrong action, we should criticize him, which means we show the wrong way. Otherwise, he doesn't know, because always he is right. Just like the dictators, always they enjoy what they killed, what they destroy, or what they just like that. So, especially his supporters also, they have to give open space for the criticism. And the other one is. Like some people's also pessimistic about this one, because Abiy is a part of the ruling party. He came from there. He had the role, blah blah. I know that, but at least he admits the problem.
Yeah, the first thing he did was to
that's
visit trouble areas and
at least he knows,
express his condolences towards the dead and accept guilt in many cases.
Yeah, that's a good thing. It's a good. I think that's one of the progress. It's a good step for me. So the media or the journalists should support him, like just not as a person, just support for the reform.
How do you see? Maybe it's not self-censorship then, but kind of some kind of loyal censorship, or I don't know how to portray it. How should we deal with this feeling?
I think we shouldn't give the power and the intent of repressing freedom of expression or media freedom only to states and governments. As far as I know, in Ethiopia, the most important source of repression is not the state, it is a culture. Even people now enjoy the freedom and support the reform and whatsoever, and they promote, they are tolerant and so on. But for many of them, it is a change of who you are supporting. It's not the change of how you approach your subjects. I don't know if I'm clear what I'm saying. For some, when a party or an individual or a group of them who you favor are in power, everything is fine. So you shouldn't criticize them, or if you criticize them, by default, your intent is, your motive is very bad. That's where many people start to see critical views. And that's where lies the problem for me. They don't see it as, okay, it's a different opinion. Can we reflect on it? Without necessarily responding to this criticism. The problem is there is very little reflection. Few weeks ago, I wrote one poem. Once in a while, I do. Don't worry, Chala, you are not the only poem, but sometimes, but I respect your area anyways. He's a good poet. So what triggered me to write that poem was that everybody's talking. And I was in a dilemma whether it is good to speak out or whether it's not. Because you can imagine, I'm for speaking. I don't talk too much, unless otherwise I'm asked like this. But you can imagine the political context is so suffocated, crowded by a lot of chaotic noises. At least as I see it, there are very few people willing to listen or reflect. Everybody is saying, talking, writing, discussing. I was in Ethiopia for 3 weeks. You just change every TV channel. There is a round table discussion. Everybody is talking. Oh, yeah, we need to talk. But who's listening? So, what was your question? Sorry.
The loyalty.
The loyalty, yes.
Loyalty.
Yes. So,
but I forget that question. Your
okay,
topic's
so
much more interesting. So you think we need more of journalism where you use your feet or go to the field or
yes,
not just talking heads?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Loyalty is a very important issue, of course, in media. And so far, many writers and journalists were more loyal to their political ideals than their professional ethics. We can debate about that, but that was a reality, and to some extent, it serves its purpose. But now, that is undergoing a change, which led to what I mentioned earlier, this identity crisis. One thing I observed in Addis was that very few local media outlets send the reporters to the field. We had to get a reporter from New York Times or whatever Western media outlets to learn about one of the biggest humanitarian crises in Ethiopia, where around 300,000-400,000 of people were evicted from where they live, and they were in a camp and so on. So when I was asking the journalists on the ground why they didn't go there, of course they have excuses. Some of them told me that they don't have a budget. Okay, that's a good reason, but not good enough not to cover, because 3-4 media outlets could have contributed money and sent 2 reporters and publish the story on the same day. Problem solved. And of course there is a security issue, which in most cases beyond their control. But again, other Western media outlets are tricking this challenge by using local informants to compile a report for them instead of journalists going from the capital to these areas. So yeah, there is really a need. That's what I said. Professionalization is a challenge. That is a move from more opinionated journalism to more fact reporting journalism. For me, that is a professional journey.
Just to sum up, if you look ahead 5 years from now, what do you see happening in terms of the situation for writers and journalists in Ethiopia? If you have short answers from both of you.
I think the change is hope. The other one is not that much, because if you see the data, because I follow and I speak for the data shows the number of media or the circulation or the penetration of like the social media or internet still low. So which means the society's the rights of access of information it's still limited. So I can't say like this kind of change, but at least there is open space. That's good thing, good opportunity. We have to use properly this good opportunity. And the other one, like how the media play their role, like the media objective. I think every media, each media have just three main objectives, either to inform anything like the information, that's the truth, or entertain, or to educate. But nowadays, most of the media, especially the diaspora-based media and the digital media, still they play just the activism role than professionalism. That affects the change, because everyone just expects it's better than just the last 5 years. That was my expect. For example, nowadays, at least the private media, 18 television stations are registered in Ethiopia. This is good progress. But still, all those 18 private or independent television stations are working properly? I doubt. Because most of them are working just as a catalyst or as an activist role than a professionalism or as a media role. That's one. And the radio, that's like 13 radio, which means it's within 1 year. It's a good progress. But the other one, like print media, still low. Even if you see the circulation of those media, it's very low. That I'm concerned.
And as you say, we sometimes talk about this pyramid. In the top, we can talk about jail journalists, but at the bottom, can people read and write? Do they have access to news and information?
Yeah, they have the right.
It's a country with 100 million people, so it's a good perspective for the future now to look at that. Who has access to the news?
Yeah,
what do you see?
That's what makes the broadcast media more influential in societies like Ethiopia, for good and bad. And unfortunately, the most polarized media outlets are in the broadcast section, which is very dangerous in a way. For me, the coming 5 years, of course, it all depends on whether the Prime Minister and his government can manage to provide safety and security and stability. If there is a stability, I see a very positive 5 years ahead of us for the media. Obviously, there is a hard time ahead of Ethiopia, in my view, but I'm very optimistic that the country will pass through these difficult times. And in 5 years, what I wish to see is 1 or 2 strong journalist associations, 1 or 2 strong vocal media councils, and quite a number of really media outlets. I think that's a possibility, provided that stability can be secured sooner. That's how I see. So, for the most part, I'm optimist.
Thank you so much, Mesfin Nagash, Civil Rights Defenders, and Vasema News, and former other newspapers, and Bisrat Voldemichael, journalist, writer, and researcher also when it comes to the media situation. Thank you so much for this discussion.
Thank you very much.
And then I would like to welcome Chala, Hahilu, Abata, to perform one of his poems. And while Chala is coming up here, first time I met Chala, he was in an underground detention center at Makalawi, and I saw you when they let you out to see the sunlight, and you were clearly affected by the torture you were subjected to at the time for your poems and for your writing. Before you read the poem, do you want to comment the discussion that we heard? Okay. Do you have thoughts? Just short.
Thank you for. Hello, everyone. I would like to thank you, all of you, especially the panelists. And I appreciate that, but I have some points to add. For example, Masvin has said celebrating press freedom in Ethiopia, at least without complaining the arrested people. That's what I thought, because even well, journalists also, because yesterday, 3 journalists were arrested in RC zone while they were on duties to report. So that's again more than 3,050 Oromos are in prison right now. So it is kind of the perspective obviously differ, and again the point. I don't know if you are aware about the command post, in the Western Oromia, more than 8 zones are under command post right now, and the people have no rights. That's also another problem and the challenges. I really respect and like that the professionalizing of journalism is the best for Ethiopia. And about the talk, what is the rationale behind everyone needs to talk? Why people are interested in talk? That's the oppression, because people have been under oppression and they had no right to speak. That's how they are entertaining. But the talk is nonsense sometimes, and so.
And I think the poem you wrote, it comes a bit out of this frustration that you feel.
Maybe
so I think the poem will also speak for itself.
Yeah, I think it's better to go to my point.
Yeah. Mesvin was in your field, and now you were into his field. And the name of the poem is Låt mig höra din sanning on Swedish. Let me hear your truth in English.
Yes. Okay. This poem was motivated and written on the basis of the certain speeches, like Masvin and my friend mentioned. So everyone talks and everyone says we are liberated and we are freed, or the people have won their freedom. And I align myself with the majority, with the mass, and I ask them if they can say the same thing. So let me hear your truths. I don't want to hear the views and the versions of demagogues, but tell me your truths and your feeling if it is true. If what everyone says to me is true, tell me if you are free. I want to see your face and what you have won your freedom. I love seeing your joy, but it is not mine. Tell me what you think and let me hear it from your mouth in your own words. What makes it a truth instead of some other? I only hear empty voices, but not truths. Their voice can be higher and louder. Their dances and the songs will be more and more exalted in your house, where your own voice is still unheard. But they translated and interpreted it in their version, and they wanted to tell me you had freedom. who has been oppressed and now has a freedom, why can't I hear it from you? And why do they have to speak on your behalf? Don't have you a language to speak for yourself? Is it true the echoes of loud voices that have orchestrated your freedom? From Borana to Brento, from the south to north, from the corner to another, from one corner to another, from your mountains to many rivers, from east to west, extended from Baro to Shabale, from Hawas to Abaya, and from Jamma to Ganale, from Jalalo to Jamjam, and from Rogge to Batu, from Garamulata to Tuludim, to the voices of traitors, the voices of oppressors, now witnessing and telling me, you are liberated. I hear the sound of them telling that you have the golden freedom, and it is told by others and repeated and loudly sung. We are liberated and we have the expected freedom now. And they put your causes into the junk. The fight you started half a century ago, the Kayo of your beloved children have fought for. They said you have achieved the set goals, and now the Kayo doesn't do anything and must be buried with the operations because you are free. Let me see in your eyes and look at your faces when you tell the truth and the truth I am starving for. Let me hear it from you, and I can read your faces that you are free. From the beginning, you were deprived of fundamental rights and affected, as I have observed from my childhood. It will never convince me when the folks who have sold your cause out tell it to me, but you who are the most oppressed, the farmers. It's not the traitors who would sing now that you are free, but let me hear it from you. Let me hear the voices of the people, not the voice of the people paid to make up stories. Let me hear from the Oromo students who have ignited the light of freedom by sacrificing their precious lives. Let me hear from if they really have freedom. If I don't see and I don't understand your freedom, if the distance made a cloud and I misunderstood the real situation you are in now and your freedom, let me see and hear what you have now. Some people explain it in the media and they tell us, you are now freed from taxation without representation. You are getting your lost land and resettled to your own land. You are now free from oppression and detention, but I wonder why the same people I have known for decades tell us that our people are liberated. I knew them, they had been telling us the same stories over. I knew them and their story, their history, and of course, they always had their freedom. And I know them, they never care about anything but their own business. They only work for their own interest, and I know they have never been oppressed. So I can't trust their stories and the verses. Nothing can be new to them about what happens and will happen to you. You are the only one who can say, I am free and I have my freedom. I just need your voice and the voice of the victims, the voice of the people repressed and resilient for over centuries. I need to hear the voice of the mass. I need the voice of Oromo student. Let me hear from you if you really have freedom. After that day, my freedom will also be comprehensive too. And I will live and lead my own life as I wish. I'm going to be released from the disturbing spirit of our fallen heroes and heroines. And it is going to be the end of all stories. One last thing I want to say is that my dreams have never been any different than yours. Now let me hear your voice of freedom. Because I knew the oppressed voices you had. I am hungry for the truth. Let me hear from you the truth. So I will understand. I'm too far away to know your situations. I will consider myself just barking, pleading for nothing when you tell me that you have your own freedom. Oh, I think it's over. Yeah, it's over. Yeah, there are some word definitions, but I think it's already understood.
to Swedish, and it's originally written in Afan Oromo.
No, originally I wrote this in English, and then it was translated by Thomas to Swedish.
Thomas Tidholm.
Thomas Tidholm,
the
the poet. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chala. And now we will hear two more poems, Gobeleng and Mojambo by Sosina Ashinafi, and they will be read also by the Swedish poet Sofia Stenström.
Och även dessa översatta då av Helena Hansson. Gobeleng. Åh, mitt hemland, du är så godtrogen. Kommer du inte ihåg? Det var din make som var mördaren, och det var din bror som blev mördad. Din sorg är så djup där inne i dina släkten. Vi minns denna tragedi år ut och år in. Kommer du inte ihåg? Det är min fråga. Åh, mitt älskade land, mänsklighetens vagga, endräktens och mångfaldens land. Vi korsade floder tillsammans. Vi var sammanvävda som ett tyg. Allt det är nu en svunnen tid som jag åter betvivlar när jag blir förvirrad. Trådarna som höll oss samman förlorar jag ur sikte och ser bara hur de repas upp. Mumbo jumbo. De pratar mumbo jumbo och har kastat ut vår själsliga moder i tomma intet. Nu syns hon som benknotor. Hon har slut på tårar och kämpar mot dödsänglarna. De matar oss med mumbo jumbo och förnekar den nakna sanningen. De måste skicka ut ett sändebud till hennes svältande barn för att föda dem och ge dem tak över huvudet. När de pratar mumbo jumbo sätter de öron på elefanten. Tack.
Tack till alla er som har tittat på den här livesändningen. Diskussionen fortsätter. Vi fortsätter att bevaka utvecklingen i Etiopien. Jättetack alla ni som kom. Finns några mackor kvar och te och kaffe. Stanna gärna kvar och prata med panelisterna och med andra. Och vill ni swisha ett stöd för mackor och kaffe till Blankspot eller PEN eller Civil Rights Defenders, så fritt fram att göra det, så vi kan fortsätta göra sådana här seminarier och arrangemang. Tusen tack, Armis Aguinaldo.